This is Critical Nonsense, your high-low-brow show about culture, science, and tech. This week, Joey asks Aaron, what is cool?
Woo! Feels so out of context in this gaudy podcast, Joey. This gets better every time, right?
You do it every
More
time.
ham-handed force.
That is what a Joey sounds like. I think today what an Aaron sounds like today is you live, you learn, you lose, you Aaron, you podcast a lot, you love, yeah, that's what Aaron sounds like today.
And I would like to thank you.
Alanis Morissette cut. I don't know if you do a cut with the drinking air horn, but yeah.
If you want a window into Aaron and I's text messaging behavior, the first window is that all messages are initiated by me. The second window is I recently sent Aaron a Damien Rice cover of Sia's Chandelier.
Which plays every time I plug in my phone to something, it plays because I clicked on it. So if I get in my car, it just starts Damien Rice's Chandelier. When I get back home, Sonos play. It's gonna play Chandelier. I can't get it to stop. You've infected every audio place in my house, and I appreciate it. It's good. It's not bad.
It's such like a telling and not necessarily flattering demonstration of the middle of our Venn diagrams.
Yes. I will also say I appreciate that you have the persistence and the knowledge that I welcome every time that you start a chat thread or a text. I haven't texted. You can ask my brother, who is still waiting for me to text him back from last Tuesday. I am a slow texter. It is not my medium. If I'm texting you, you should know I actually care to a point that I sent the first text and you will respond. I might respond 5 years later. Like I will get back to you, I promise. But I love you. I love you. That's all I want to say. I love you.
You should set yourself like a Sunday morning text debt forgiveness day where you just spend a half hour and reply to all of the texts from the week that you didn't respond.
You don't think I do this anyway? It's terrible because like people send me something and then like literally 3 or 4 days later I just go It's like I saw it then. I finally got it, but like just so you know, receipt in this very urgent format. I got it.
You typed HAHA, which is one step better than the iMessage thumbs up.
It is. It's one piece of work harder. Like just and the reason I love that we're doing a mini podcast episode about texting behaviors, because I know that other people feel these different ways about it too, is that like as a human being, I am very much like I believe that I love words. I believe that words matter. I also deeply believe in like being seen, and it's like an insecurity that I feel. And so I feel like if I'm texting back, I want to think about what I'm texting back. I want to like have a minute to just be like, I acknowledge what you said. And you know what? There's something that I put some thought into, when I also recognize that literally the purpose of text is to be throwaway and not to be over.
You're such an editor.
Through. I am such an editor. That's true. Yes, and it is true.
And I am not.
That's
Even
true.
When I should be. When I should be.
I do like that we have very I don't know that I would qualify it as I over edit and you under edit, but I don't think that those are two uncharitable characterizations of us as people.
No, that's not too often. No.
This is good. We don't have a guest with us today.
I under edit. I under edit.
And I will
own
say
that. Hand up.
All right, we're both owning our shiz today, and I support that.
There we go.
But a human being that can't own her shiz with us is Jess. She is out in the world doing things. We send you I don't know if you guys like do this when I'm not around, but like, we see you, Jess, next time. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just say we miss you every time. So.
Oh, and I hear it so frequently. I'm sorry.
Good on Jess too. I've texted her a few times about unrelated, like not work related or anything things, and she has not responded. So good on her.
Yeah, hell yeah. It takes time.
But Aaron, speaking of the center of our Venn diagrams,
yeah,
and Damien Rice covers of Sia's chandelier, I wanted to ask you a question, and maybe no setup. Maybe I will take that, Jess. I'm not even going to set this up at all.
Rude.
I miss you.
Not even here.
I miss you. Take that. Aaron, what is cool?
I can't help but immediately giggle because, like, I just love the idea of me in particular as the arbiter of cool in any way, shape, or form. I don't know if anyone can hear the skateboard over my shoulder or like the hat slipping backwards and just me turning into Black Steve Buscemi, but I am a meme right now of Hello Fellow Kids. I will qualify that that's going to happen this entire conversation, and I am only self-conscious about it, but I'm not mad about it. I will say that. So I have a thought about cool. And it's informed by a couple of different things. One is more linguistic. The fact that as like a slang word, cool has like been around longer than most slang words have. There's a really interesting,
like the 30s, right? Something like that.
They've been saying it since then, and somehow it doesn't go through what a lot of other slang words for what cool stands for does, which is that as soon as it, graduates with a certain generation, like you say cool anymore because it becomes uncool. Like the nature of cool is about newness, is about emerging culture, and you become like the older class. But somehow cool has transcended and moves across generations very easily since it's been around so well. I think that's an interesting like aspect of it. There's something rather enduring or incredibly flexible about the concept of cool. That's worth nodding to. The second thing is that I do think that cool has a few different valences, right? And I'm curious about which one is the one that you're like most interested in. There is cool as trend, like cool as in like the novelty of something that has caught fire with a group of people and deserving of attention. There is also cool as in vibe. And I do separate those things because the second is a little bit more about like character and presence. And that's less about trend expression and more about like energy, exuding energy. And I'm wondering, I'm stopping myself because there probably is a third, but I'm not going to do that Aaron Powers rule of three thing right now. I'm curious, is there one or both of those that you had in your mind when you think about what is cool?
I appreciate you breaking this apart because I think it's helpful. So the sort of beginnings of this a little bit was a conversation that I was having with my wife, who won't listen to this, so I feel comfortable talking. But somehow in the conversation, she said, "I don't think you're cool," but not in like a rude way. It wasn't. It was to give me like other compliments or something. Like I don't think you're cool, but you're these other things that are like equally positive traits or whatever. And I was like, well, I didn't think I was cool or not, but now I'm like thinking about what is cool and what it is. And so you're breaking apart of it. I think I was probably sitting in the more of the camp of what makes a person cool. But I think you're right in the sort of what things are cool, what stuff is cool, what behaviors, what words that feels outside of an individual's behavior is like very distinct, is sort of novelty and mimetic and all of those things that you were talking about. Whereas what makes a person cool. And I like the way that you talked about it of there's like an energy, right? And even hearing you say that, I was like, well, I certainly have probably too much energy to be cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like there is a kinetic nature to my being that is not cool. Right. There's friction in my center.
Well, I like to believe that I only hang out with cool people, and I think that you're cool. So I'm going to qualify that a little bit, because like, and this is where I think it's interesting to start to pull it apart, because like kinetic energy, there's like, there are people who are cool that have kinetic energy that we would call cool. And maybe a lot of those people are, well, this is what's going on in my head. There's like swag, right? So you've got like this understatedness, this unflappability, this sort of a chill that comes with it. That's just like nothing is going to rile me. And I think there's that energy. But then I would say that there are people who would also call certain high energy or magnetic people who are extremely charismatic and pull you in, as being very cool. And I don't know that having lots of energy disqualifies one from being cool. But as we're saying this out loud, I guess you do have to have that understatedness, like, in order to pass the test. Because like Obama is cool. Like, there's politics, we can put all that aside. Obama is a chill brother. Like, he's cool.
Ice cold. He's like, so cool.
He's so cool. And it is, I think a lot of that comes from that unflappability. But then you also can't ignore like just charisma and charm. And I would argue that I wouldn't classify him as low energy either. Like, he's got a lot of energy. And like, yes, he's also got all those uhs and that very deliberate speech style. But there's like a lot of spark in that. Which is interesting that they can coexist.
The thing that I had said to you before we jumped on was around this idea of like grounded self-confidence, I think was the way that I spoke about it, right? This idea of just like, and you sort of talked about being like unflappable. There is sort of like a tether and a sort of centeredness, for lack of, or like reaching for the right language, where a person just knows who they are and is accepting of that, and that inherently sort of gives off that energy of coolness. And I think right there are like that sort of like one tier up where you started talking about swag, right? Where like swag, or other terms in a similar vein, are like about flourish and a little bit more of maybe a louder version of cool, right? Where it is like, it's sort of like dripping off of someone, right? Like language like drip, talking about someone's clothes is talking about like, it's sort of loud and cool and interesting and all of those things. But I like that idea of sort of being grounded and sort of self-confident. It's interesting though, because I feel like in sort of this moment, or like this moment maybe being the past 10 years, where we're sort of reevaluating a lot of historical structures and attempting to change things, this self-confidence can very much go the wrong way. So I think people are actually quite trepidatious around their own self-confidence, or at least maybe self-aware people are, because you can argue, we've spoken about like Karens, or I guess whatever the male equivalent is like maybe it's a Chad, I don't know. But that idea of being a Karen is like sort of an unfounded confidence, or like too much confidence in the wrong ways, right? Like an entitlement, right? Entitlement is like a confidence, like I deserve this thing, even when maybe you don't. And so I think as I was thinking about this after my wife had brought this up, and I'm just like riding my bike, I'm like, what is cool? Like, like what things are cool? I had started to go in this direction that coolness right now feels like heavily mimetic, maybe more mimetic than it, certainly more mimetic than it did when I was young. And maybe that's just a product of like the speed of technology, but maybe it is because of this reappraisal of how we should feel about ourselves. Ideas like checking your privilege and all of these other ideas are like forcing people to take an introspective look at where their confidence is emanating from. And so if that is true, and maybe we are in a moment with a dearth of confidence, and like, I don't know whether I agree with that statement that there is a dearth of confidence, but I do feel like coolness has pushed more into this novelty, new, shorter windows type of thing. And I'm curious about how you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about the more mimetic style or the more mimetic vernacular of cool, I think about high school lunch cafeterias. Like I think about how, like, when I was a kid, what did we call the cool kids table? And we weren't describing the kids that were calm and confident and like very centered. We were actually talking about the ones that had the coolest new stuff and that were following the latest trends. But we were and we were also talking in that case about, and I don't know that we had the language for it, but we were talking about privilege and power. Like, I just rewatched Mean Girls the other day, and like, well, let me rephrase that. I watched Trixie and Katya doing Queens Who Like to Watch on YouTube, which is them watching Mean Girls and then doing commentary in a half an hour. It's great. Everybody should watch Queens Who Like to Watch. It's fantastic. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because, like, there's an obvious thing of the more money you have, the more able you are to be able to chase trends. And if you are a child, you do not have a job. You are literally working with your parents' wealth, your family's wealth that you are just a beneficiary of having popped into the world in that circle. So in any case, like, a lot of what was deemed as cool and the ability to move with trends as they shifted, regardless of how fast they were actually sort of developing a galvanizing force, was a direct function of was very, very correlated with your monetary means. So I think that there's both, like, there's an essential need or role for money to be able to play a role in being able to exude the more transactional or fast moving cool. I also think that type of cool lacks perhaps some of the confidence. I agree with you that I think that there's definitely
depth.
Yeah, it lacks depth, but I agree with you that there is still a conversation that's happening between them. I do think that there is also much more plurality when it comes to, and much more space for individual coolness now than there had been in the past. There's more openness for there to be different ways to describe someone or something or some moment as being worthy of, like, thumbs up validation of some sort. And I think that's also where it sort of, like, it doesn't break down for me a little bit, but I would not, I think there's a lot more room. There's more room than there ever has been. And I'm thinking about the youth today to make room for different types of cool or valid. And I think there's more room for positive, progressive values to have space for that cool, or to make space for that cool.
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I think you're right. The individual cool, if it is about grounded self-confidence, allows for much more diversity in expressions of being cool, and a lot of things have enabled that, right? Like the idea of nerds being able to be cool, and all the subcultures of nerddom being able to be cool among their people, or for like science kids to be able to be cool. It's like, if you can sort of own that idea of like the things that excite you and where your passion is, and just live in it, like, you can be cool, right? There's like interesting examples of that, right? Like Hank Green and like John Green that do like the science shows, right? They are not cool in that like newest fashion type of thing. But just saying like science kids made me think of Hank Green in the science show. And so, but I was like, but he like knows who he is and is like very comfortable in that. And so he is cool in that way, in the way that like anybody can be. And there's like a much larger variance. There's something else that you said though, that I saw I don't remember the person's name. I didn't save it, but I saw a tweet that was lamenting the fact that historically that sort of status cool thing that you're talking about, in order to be like a wealthy person, you had to be embedded in like the arts and culture as well. Like arts and culture were fed by that. But today's like rich people and billionaires are basically just going, you know, not even billionaires, like millionaires are sort of have no obligation to like get the status of their wealth like checked by the sort of caliber of their cultural participation. And so there is a bit potentially of decoupling of those concepts a little. But I don't know if it's true or how, to what degree those things are decoupling, but it's interesting that like high culture, right, like literature, the theater, like all of the like high art were always sort of associated with wealth because they were, you know, patronizing it, and in order to sort of navigate like high status culture, you needed to be able to be fluent in those things, and you don't now. And so there is something that is like, in the same way that like fast fashion would allow you to dress maybe on trend even if the items aren't of quality today, like there's a potential for decoupling of wealth and cool in that like mimetic way that you were talking about.
Yeah, I do think that there are now more ways to project cool without there are more means of production toward cool, I guess. If I could like say it that way, but
the cool GDP is strong.
Yeah, I think if there's going to be a state of the union, there needs to be a state of the cool union. State of the cool? I can't get there. It's hard. But one thing that you just said that really struck me is that there is this interplay between culture and cool, and an interplay because I think first of all, I think we cannot have a conversation about cool without talking about Blackness, because Black culture, Black vernacular, Black clothing, Black arts are always what ends up, like everything ends up being co-opted and then called cool. It's observed as this like countercultural force, and then it's like, oh, then we're going to start saying these words because it makes us feel cool. And it was a part of a culture. It was the output of a culture that was othered. And it's almost this like moment of very uneasy, you know, knighting of like, all right, we can badge this thing as acceptable to us, so now we will call it cool because it's a fun play on the way that we have done things. So there's a very in and out nature to cool. And I think that it is drawn across racial lines. I think there's an element of that. I think the other thing is that there's a lot of culture that doesn't get seen, that is very much, well, there's two other pieces. One is that I think it's not just the co-optation of like these artifacts of culture that gets pulled from Black community, but I think it's communities, but also just the fact that there's a sense of confidence and resilience in the face of adversity, and a sort of that coolness, that unflappability, like the Black experience. Anyone who can go through that much and then still have like the room and time and energy to create these things that create joy. I do think that there's a connection to that as well, that's a part of why that's a heart of the definition, or like another valence of the definition of cool. But when you were talking about like different aspects of, or different groups and different cultures and different in-groups that have their own sort of like their own CDP, their own cool GDP, so to speak, a cool domestic profit. I don't know, that doesn't work as well. Like when I think about watching Dynasty in the 80s, or Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous in the 90s, or Keeping Up with the Kardashians, like not about what they're wearing, but there are these lifestyles within there that also sometimes get knighted as cool, but it's more so, it's not cool, it's aspirational. And the reason I'm bringing all these like weird little bits and bobs up is because it starts to pull apart for me that there is a difference between culture and cool. And cool is, I think, and what is determined as cool is about tapping into and borrowing from cultures that are aspects of cultures that are seen as aspirational. And I think that exercise of pulling and defining or codifying as cool, who gets to do that, what are the things that get pulled, and what is the rubric of decision making, is kind of the thing that is much more complicated now when you talk about the mimetic nature and the speed at which cool is moving. Those transactions are more visible now, and also the impact of those transactions is more perhaps intense now, because there's so much to track and so much that you could or could not be a part of, and each different symbol signifies something else on the surface level. But also, to your point, we have a better understanding of where we should or should not tap those signals and symbols.
Can I combine a few things that we've been saying? That the fact, this grounded confidence thing, I think coolness possesses a bit of a lack of fear, right? Or at least the presenting of a lack of fear. Simultaneously, I think that it is sort of associated with like breaking norms.
Yes.
In some capacity, breaking a norm while not presenting with fear. And so I think, right, like thinking about Obama as an example, right? First Black president, doesn't dress or act the way that all of the old white dude presidents before him were doing. And so, but was confident in his own style of governance and leadership and all of those things, like using that as an example, right? It is normative. He's breaking sort of normative tradition with comfort. And like, there's degrees, right? Like we can talk about these sort of social mores, right? This is how you're supposed to behave in this context, right? Nerds are supposed to be quiet and afraid to socialize and X, Y, and Z. And then when you have someone who is a nerd who is not afraid to do those things, then they're both simultaneously breaking norms while just being like, I don't care what you think. That sort of imbues the coolness. And I think it also ties to then the conversation that you were having about sort of this co-opting of aspects of Black culture, right? Black culture traditionally wasn't allowed to be normative because it was intentionally excluded. And so then was allowed to exist on its own. And so, as some of those barriers have broken. Obviously, it is not utopia, but as people enter into spaces that they haven't been able to enter into before and are acting in a way that is different from how everyone else is acting, and if they present with confidence and a lack of fear, then it just is full of this idea of coolness, right? Like you're breaking a rule that I didn't like myself, but you're not scared of it, right? Like maybe that rule that had gotten beaten into someone's head had not been beaten into this other person's head. And so you are just like, I'm just here. I'm doing my thing. I'm doing the same things. It's not like breaking a law. It's breaking an unspoken like social rule, like social more. And that becomes like this gravitational thing of like, how are you breaking that? I want to be near you breaking rules that I want to break myself, but I can't.
I'm obsessed with this, and this might be my attempt at a Jess's wrap up corner, kind of.
Let's go.
As I boil it down, the question is, what is cool? And there are at least 4 factors that we've identified, perhaps 5, that are cool. And I'm going to go in no particular order, but perhaps it's going to be with where my memory
We
can
broke
remember.
Aaron's rule of 3s.
We did. We've maybe gotten up to 5. Oh my God, this is going to be a mess. So fearlessness, there needs to be an element of being the projection of a lack of fear. I think that's probably the most important part, is that there's a projection to it, not an absence of fear.
Real or projected, yeah.
Yes. Confidence, which is separate from the fear, an idea that what you are doing, where you're showing up, is right. There's nothing to question. This is actually what the is. That it is countering culture norms. It has to be in some way countering whatever group's prevailing theory is, or behavior, or way of modus operandi is. And it represents someone's aspiration. It is aspirational, that behavior, that norm breaking, that all of that together. Because you could do all those things and like it's just trash and being an asshole. Like, that's not cool. That's literally the absence of the aspiration makes it uncool.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, Chad and Karen, goodbye. But the additive aspiration congeals the sauce into a lovely, it's the fish sauce in your tomato soup. It pulls it all together and balances the acidity with just the nice roundness that was missing. Also, pro tip for home cooks: always add fish sauce to your tomato sauce. It's killer.
I love this.
It's really good.
Confident, fearless, norm breaking aspiration. Like,
we've defined cool. We did it.
You are a smart person. I will sit on your wrap-up corner and in awe.
Well, we'll be cool, fellow kids. You guys can hang out with us later.
Critical Nonsense is a Sylvain production.
Brought to you by Cubic Zirconia. Is it cool? Who knows? But it looks very flashy.
As always, we'd like to thank our executive producer and just all-around cool kid, Jess Vander.
And likewise, sound engineer and really human cucumber, Alex Contel. Man, it's cool. Man, it's very cool.
We'd like to thank our program coordinator and, the coolest DJ I know, certainly, Les Jacobs.
Oh, and we cannot forget about Norm Estrich and Sarah Gilbert, who provide all the production help here at Critical Nonsense. I would say they might be cooler than a polar bear's toenails. Oh, I did it. Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And as always, sorry, Len.
Man.
Special thanks.
Special thanks
to how much does a polar bear weigh? Enough to break the ice. Polar bears just giving us
a lot in this
tools.
moment. They really are. I want to thank Outkast. That Andre 3000, that line, why is it still in my brain? Why is it sitting there ready to come out? You are a lyrical wizard, and thank you for that.
Sorry, Miss Jackson.
Ooh. Okay, surprisingly, I'm going to thank my a cappella group from college because when I was a freshman, that was what we did. Rule. I know. Let me just tell you, there is nothing more misguided than a bunch of 18-year-olds who are singing in a room together and really thinking that they are cool. Like, we deeply believed that we were cool. And actually, we manufactured our own cool. So, that's the other thing. It's all about the projection of fearlessness. That can get you a long way to cool. Khakis and blazers. I'm just saying.
First, we get the khakis. Then we get the jobs. Then we get the chicks. Basketball.
I was about to say, because this is not my life plan. I don't know that.
No, this is a 1990s reference. Why is that stuck in my head? I have no idea.
Because Trey Parker and Matt,
Stone?
I'm broken. Stone, there it is. Also, very good writers. They make good content. I don't have anything else for you, Joey, and I don't think I have anything else for the listeners. It's time.
Thank you. Love you. Bye.
Bye. Why is it saying Mark 1? Is that a problem? The numbers are running, so I guess it's fine.